According to the latest news from Fox News, on April 10th, a ferocious cyclone ravaged the southern United States, sweeping across like a giant beast with claws and teeth, bringing devastating damage to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Blow. This severe weather system ravaged the entire Gulf Coast, bringing widespread flooding and a series of tornadoes, creating a sustained and violent storm. According to the latest report from the National Weather Service, NWS, the storm has gradually moved eastward, causing storms and flash floods to hit parts of Florida and Georgia. The originally peaceful coastline suddenly turned into a vast ocean. Just as the sky was getting dark, heartbreaking news came from Scott County, Mississippi. A 64-year-old woman died after her oxygen machine stopped working after a power outage. Another person was injured in the storm. The hardest-hit areas of this unprecedented superstorm are undoubtedly concentrated in Louisiana, especially the New Orleans area. The sky had just dawned, and the heavy rain hit the city like an out-of-control flood, flooding the streets and submerging underground passages, as if it was going to swallow up the entire city. The hardest-hit areas include New Orleans East, the 7th Ward, downtown, Gentilly, uptown, and the Central Business District. A large number of cars stalled and broke down on the road, and people had to walk step by step through knee-deep rainwater. In the water. The National Weather Service quickly declared a flash flood emergency across New Orleans, calling on residents to stay indoors as much as possible and avoid venturing out. Subsequently, the NWS also issued a flash flood warning for New Orleans, Kenner, and Metairie, and a tornado warning for New Orleans before 1 p.m. Meanwhile, New Orleans Sewerage and Water Board is in trouble. They said some drainage pumping stations have received more than 7 inches of rain, well beyond the capacity of the system. To make matters worse, they had to implement power rationing at the water pumping station due to some electrical issues. Grace Birch, a spokesperson for the embattled agency, said that even at full power, their system could only handle 1 inch of rain in the first hour of the storm and only every hour thereafter. 0.5 inches of rain. As you can imagine, New Orleans's drainage system was simply unable to cope with this heavy rainstorm that lasted several hours. As expected, the city was badly affected. At noon, rain gauges in some areas showed more than 7 inches of precipitation, causing a large number of roads and underpasses to be flooded and impassable. Canal Street, Marconi Drive, and other major thoroughfares were all disrupted and paralyzed. At this juncture, the National Weather Service and the police urgently appealed to residents not to go out, let alone drive, because many roads have been engulfed by floods. Thank you for liking, leaving comments, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update every day. The residents of New Orleans were terrified and the entire city was paralyzed. Statistics showed that during the storm, about 160,000 customers were without power across the state, and 780 customers were without power in New Orleans. Many schools and universities have also been forced to close classes and switch to online teaching. While New Orleans is suffering from flooding, another disaster is quietly happening. Just 30 miles northeast of New Orleans, in the town of Slidell and the city southwest of Lake Charles, 2 confirmed tornadoes raged through like an uncontrollable beast, tearing apart houses, overturning cars, and bringing serious consequences to the local people. There came a huge loss. According to Slidell police, there were at least mild to moderate injuries in the disaster area, but the exact number was unknown. Locally, more than 25,000 customers were also without power. Water shortages and power outages seem to have become the norm in the lives of New Orleans people. As time goes by, more and more users are cut off from power, reaching a peak in the evening, with a total of 190,000 homes and businesses across the state experiencing power outages. The next morning, the situation had not improved, with 139,000 households still without power. People can't help feeling that this is the sadness of living in a city based on sewers. Just as New Orleans was in dire straits, Mississippi was also experiencing bad luck. According to the local emergency management agency, a 64-year-old woman was killed and another person was injured in Scott County. Government officials also said that at least 72 homes were damaged by the storm in multiple counties, 45 of which were in Scott County, east of Jackson. What is heartbreaking is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are still many disasters that have not yet been fully controlled. As the South grapples with flooding and tornadoes, Southeast Texas is being battered by ferocious rainstorms. In Kirbyville, floodwaters slammed into a barn and threatened to swallow it whole. At this critical moment, a brave farmer walked into the raging flood resolutely. He walked carefully into the water and swam hard toward the horses trapped in the barn. The undulating waves on the water surface were like wild beasts with teeth and claws, as if they would drag this brave farmer into the water at any time. But he was not at all intimidated by the danger before him, and instead swam farther and farther until he came to the horse lying in the water. I saw those tall and strong horses struggling hard and making bursts of lamentation. There was a look of panic and help in their eyes, as if begging this stranger to save their lives. The farmer did not hesitate at all. He tied the rope skillfully and pulled the horses ashore one by one. It is heartbreaking to see these noble creatures who once ran freely being forced to struggle to survive in the floods. But at this moment, the farmer stepped forward, regardless of the danger, and risked the rescue without hesitation, which made people sincerely moved. His courage and responsibility undoubtedly brought a gratifying light to this disaster. The heroic deeds of this farmer have undoubtedly become a beautiful sight in this heavy rain attack. He stepped forward and risked his life to save a group of helpless horses, showing the best side of human nature. In this ocean-like flood, his figure is like a beacon, guiding the world in the direction forward. His story will undoubtedly become the most unforgettable memory of this superstorm. Expert analysis believes that the storm originated from a powerful low-pressure system moving rapidly from West Texas. This low-pressure system disk area carries a large amount of water vapor from the Gulf of Mexico. When it meets the jet stream known as the maximum velocity, it forms a powerful thunderstorm squall line that sweeps eastward. The National Weather Service said the violent nature of this squall line, combined with jet stream wind shear, likely led to tornadoes in southwestern Mississippi and between Slidell and the Stennis Space Center. Data show that during the superstorm, parts of New Orleans recorded total rainfall of 5 to 8 inches, comparable to the amount of rainfall experienced during some of the city's recent severe flooding events. In other areas, more than 10 inches of rain fell. The destructiveness of this rainstorm is evident. In Slidell, hundreds of homes were severely damaged and more than 25,000 customers were without power. Across Louisiana, 190,000 households and businesses were without power at the peak, and 139,000 households were still without power the next day. It is puzzling that the city's infrastructure is so fragile and unable to cope with such intense rainstorms. The storm undoubtedly once again exposed the vulnerability of New Orleans' infrastructure to extreme weather events. The city has been grappling with the challenges of climate change for years, but deficiencies in the drainage system remain a pressing issue. During the storm, failures in water pumping stations and power systems led to large-scale flooding and power outages, highlighting the weaknesses in the city's infrastructure. Worryingly, this severe weather event has hit the entire southern United States hard. One person was killed in Mississippi, many buildings were damaged, traffic was paralyzed, and power supply was interrupted. This once again reminds us that extreme weather events are becoming an increasingly serious challenge. We must work together to strengthen climate change adaptation capabilities and improve the resilience of infrastructure to disasters, to mitigate the harm caused by such events and create a safer and more prosperous future for future generations. Generally speaking, floods are the result of a combination of multiple factors. First, climate change plays a key role in the occurrence of floods. As global temperatures continue to rise, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and severe. The increasing intensity and frequency of tropical cyclones, coupled with increased rainfall, provide favorable conditions for the occurrence of floods. For example, the southern United States has frequently encountered super strong storms in recent years, such as Hurricane Harvey in 2017 and the storm that swept through New Orleans in 2024, both of which are typical cases of climate change trends. Secondly, human activities have also aggravated flood disasters to a great extent. The rapid advancement of urbanization has led to the rapid expansion of impervious surface area and reduced surface water storage capacity. The construction of a large number of buildings and roads has hindered the natural discharge of rainwater, making urban waterlogging problems increasingly prominent. In addition, people's overexploitation and destruction of both sides of the river have also destroyed the natural regulating mechanism and weakened the river's flood control capacity. This contributes to flooding events to a great extent. What cannot be ignored is that geological conditions are also one of the important factors causing floods. Some areas are extremely vulnerable to floods due to low-lying terrain or landform characteristics. New Orleans is a typical example. It is located in the Mississippi River Delta, has low terrain, and is affected by rivers and lakes. It is easily flooded in heavy rains. In addition, the city's drainage system facilities are outdated and unable to effectively cope with heavy rainfall, making it a flood-prone area. Of particular importance is the fact that dense population is a key factor in increasing the severity of flood disasters. There are many residents in big cities. Once a flood occurs, it means that property and life will face a huge threat. Take New Orleans as an example. The city is densely populated and has fragile infrastructure. Heavy rains will cause serious losses. In fact, after every large-scale flood, the city is paralyzed, showing its lack of disaster resilience. It should be noted that the construction of flood control facilities is also the key to affecting flood disasters. In some areas, the lack of effective flood control projects, such as dams and drainage systems, has led to flooding and heavy losses. On the contrary, areas with complete flood control systems can effectively control disasters and minimize losses even if they encounter heavy rainfall. Therefore, strengthening the construction of flood control infrastructure is crucial to reduce flood disasters. It is worth mentioning that the soundness of the forecast and early warning system is also an important factor affecting flood disasters. Perfect monitoring and forecasting methods can detect abnormal weather dynamics in a timely manner, provide early warning to residents and government departments, and help prepare for prevention. On the contrary, an incomplete early warning system will lead to unnecessary losses of people and property. During the storm in New Orleans, the National Weather Service issued various warnings in a timely manner, which greatly reduced the disaster. It can be seen that the role of forecast and early warning in disaster reduction cannot be ignored. In addition, the soundness of the emergency management system also directly affects the losses caused by flood disasters. An efficient emergency management system can quickly organize rescues, evacuate affected people, provide emergency assistance, etc. when a disaster occurs, significantly reducing casualties. On the contrary, poor emergency management will worsen the disaster and cause greater losses. It can be said that emergency management capabilities are the key to mitigating flood disasters. It should be noted that the public's awareness of disaster prevention and self-rescue and mutual rescue capabilities are also important factors that affect the degree of flood disasters. A public with strong safety awareness and strong self-rescue and mutual rescue abilities can often take effective measures to minimize losses when floods come. On the contrary, the public who lack awareness of disaster prevention will easily fall into a passive situation and cause unnecessary casualties once they encounter a flood. Therefore, improving the public's awareness of disaster prevention and self-rescue capabilities is also an effective way to reduce flood disasters. What deserves more attention is the role of the government in responding to flood disasters. A government that attaches great importance to disaster prevention and reduction, formulates scientific emergency plans, and has strong financial investment can effectively curb the spread of flood disasters. On the contrary, the government that pays insufficient attention, has poor plans and insufficient investment will find it difficult to take effective actions at critical moments, worsening the disaster situation. This is also one of the important reasons for the disparity in flood losses in different regions. What should be more important is the role of technological innovation in disaster reduction. Advanced monitoring and early warning technology, efficient drainage equipment, intelligent emergency systems, etc. can greatly improve flood prevention and disaster reduction capabilities. Taking New Orleans as an example, if it had a better drainage system and smarter emergency command, it might be able to better cope with this heavy rain. It can be seen that technological innovation is the key to reducing flood disasters. When a flood comes, how to effectively avoid danger and escape is an issue that everyone should pay attention to. First of all, it is crucial to improve one's own disaster prevention awareness and response capabilities. Once a flood warning is received, residents must immediately prepare for evacuation and cannot take it lightly. Timely transfer to a safe area and away from low-lying areas prone to flooding is the primary measure to avoid being hit by floods. Residents should also take the initiative to pay attention to the guidelines and orders of the local government and emergency departments, actively cooperate with the evacuation work, and avoid taking unauthorized actions to avoid falling into danger. Secondly, mastering the correct self-rescue and mutual rescue skills is also key. Once trapped in floods, residents should stay calm and avoid acting rashly. First of all, pay attention to your own safety and do not enter the raging flood easily to avoid unnecessary casualties. If there are escape tools, such as life jackets, ropes, etc., use them in time. If there are children or people with mobility impairments at home, it is even more important to ensure their safety and look out for each other. At the same time, you must actively call for help and seek help from people around you. Only by mastering the correct self-rescue and mutual rescue methods can we minimize the losses caused by flood disasters. At the same time, making full use of scientific and technological means is also an important measure to effectively deal with floods. On the one hand, residents should pay attention to flood warning information issued by local governments and meteorological departments in a timely manner and understand flood dynamics. On the other hand, we must also learn to use mobile apps, social media, and other channels to obtain immediate rescue information and seek explanations. In addition, you can also use some smart home equipment to take protective measures in advance to reduce property losses. It can be said that scientific and technological means have given wings to soar in flood response. In addition, rational arrangement of living space can also help residents escape and avoid danger. Some higher second floors or attics have become safer refuges. Moreover, when renovating a house, important facilities such as power sockets should be placed as high as possible from the ground to avoid being soaked by floods. At the same time, sufficient evacuation passages should be left around the house to ensure smooth escape. It can be said that reasonable living space layout is a powerful guarantee for dealing with floods. It is worth mentioning that it is also necessary to reserve necessary daily necessities in advance. Before floods come, residents should prepare food, drinking water, medical supplies, flashlights, radios, and other necessities in case of emergency. At the same time, you should also prepare some simple emergency tools, such as ropes, gloves, life jackets, etc., for use in emergencies. In addition, make sure that mobile phones, batteries, and other electronic devices have sufficient power to maintain communication with the outside world. Only by making sufficient material preparations in advance can residents be calm when floods come response. What cannot be ignored is that cultivating good escape awareness and drills are also important ways to improve the ability to respond to floods. Residents should regularly participate in disaster prevention drills organized by local governments and become familiar with evacuation routes and shelter locations. At the same time, you should also take the initiative to discuss emergency plans with your family and neighbors to ensure that everyone knows what actions should be taken. Only through continuous training and practice can residents' escape skills and adaptability be continuously improved, so that they can make correct judgments and take timely actions at critical moments. It is especially important to remain calm and rational when experiencing flooding. Some people act impulsively and dangerously out of panic, which will undoubtedly aggravate the disaster. On the contrary, the right thing to do is to stay calm, follow the guidance of the government and emergency departments, and actively cooperate with rescue efforts. At the same time, we should take the initiative to help vulnerable groups around us, such as the elderly, children, and people with disabilities, to ensure their safety. Only by working together as one can we better respond to floods and minimize losses. Thank you for liking, leaving a message, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update the latest news from around the world every day. Continue to use a scientific perspective to explore the complex truth behind meteorological events.